And on to a matter closer to home, the controversial Bibby Stockholm Barge. The floating vessel will house migrants once again from this morning, as it's reported 29 asylum seekers will reboard the barge.
29. Around 40 migrants were forced to evacuate the floating accommodation back in August after deadly Legionella bacteria was discovered in its water supply. Now, Susan Phoenix is a member of the No to the Barge campaign in Dorset, in Portland, the Jurassic Coast, where the temporary accommodation for these migrants is currently berthed. Susan, welcome to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this whole Bibby Stockholm Barge? We'll talk, obviously, about the migrant situation, but as a resident, we're interested. What do you make of this barge arriving in Portland and everything that comes with it?
Well, I think we've talked about this so often in the last 3 months, but it has to be, Jeremy, a gross insult to democracy. There have never been any consultations with the local population. There was never any real forethought, even with the people who organised it. They didn't look at our infrastructure. They didn't look at where we are. Most people don't know where Portland is. People often say, oh, Portland, Oregon, is that where you are? This is a beautiful World Heritage Site. And nobody thought, they went, oh, it's far enough away from London. Let's just stick it down there because we have some very wealthy, greedy port owners who will let us buy a slot. And of course they did. Nobody asked anybody. So you can understand there's social division, there's anger, there's frustration at not being listened to. And this has very little to do with the immigrants. It's a lot more to do with the local population who have just been treated like old-fashioned medieval serfs, I call it.
It's really interesting what you say there, Susan, because I think no matter what side of the argument you land on, in terms of asylum seekers in the UK, people seeking refuge, or whether you refer to people as economic migrants. I know we've had that discussion before, but I think what has united people is that actions like this, opening the Bibby Stockholm, seemed to me like such dog whistle politics to say, we're going to put these people on a boat. We're going to solve the small boats crisis by getting a bigger boat that is not economically viable. It's extremely expensive. But it's not keeping people in the local community happy.
Well, that's it. Can I just read this to you, Nick? Because this is really interesting. You said to one of my researchers, Susan, you and your campaigners have been abused. You've been called racist for petitioning against the barge. You've been told that you're being disrespectful to migrants. You're talking, and that's the point you made, about your community. Because all these people who pontificate and say, oh, we'll do this and we'll do that, it's like the building of houses. Everybody says we need more houses. And when it comes to be voted for, people in their constituencies aren't interested. This is your home, right? How do you... Tell us how it makes you feel. Does it make you feel like you've been taken advantage of?
Absolutely. The sheer frustration. I was at a meeting last night, not related to this, because now at long last our local council are waking up. The fact the local people were ignored by local councils, by the county council, they just didn't speak to anyone because, again, it comes down the things I never believed in. I've travelled the world. I've lived a really full, rich life. I didn't believe in class politics and all this stuff in my naivety, but it's power and politics from the top. Let's just do this. Never mind what the little people say. And it really is the frustration. And it is, well, it's just a disaster waiting to happen.
And Susan, we obviously have got an issue in the UK with processing people. There's a backlog of over 170,000 people waiting for asylum claims. The argument, again, on both sides is if we sped up those claims...
Yeah, well, we agree on that.
We agree on that. People would be dealt with quicker in the right way. But in the meantime, what would you and the people who work on your campaign propose as an alternative to the Bibby Stockholm?
Well, for a start, these billions, and it is billions that have been paid out for the Bibby Stockholm to foreign companies, by the way, starting with the Australian company organising all of these things. That money could have been better spent training. The more I look, the more I read, we don't have any assessors properly trained. For a start, I can quite happily say that I don't think the Home Office is fit for purpose. They haven't actually spoken to us at all, apart from on a very bad Zoom link, pretending they couldn't hear what local people were saying.
Wow.
And it's the fact that the power at the top, the money at the top, they don't care. Let's flash it about. Let's see who we can buy. Oh, yeah, there's a port down there. They'll take our money. That is the kind of thing that I never believed. And now I came here to retire in this beautiful countryside, lovely, peaceful island. And now we find we're doing this to stand up for the rights, the words I never thought I'd use in my life, the rights of local good people, just ordinary people who are being walked over, who are being abused, We have had our protest marches. We haven't had many recently because people got tired of being called racist and Nazis by other ordinary people. Where does this come from? I feel it's a nationwide power trip. And it comes, of course, from the last-ditch vanity project of Suella and Rishi. There's no doubt about that.
And Susan, just to clarify, your main issue there being with the bureaucrats and the people who are making these decisions rather than the asylum seekers themselves.
Yes, and listening to your last bit before there, this is the problem. Asylum seekers are one thing. Whatever we like to call, we're calling them guests at the moment on this barge, and people get the wrong end of the stick. But listening to the wars going on now, people would accept families who are really escaping. But we see these big fit men coming off and onto that boat, and we know they are being bullied as well. Get on that boat or else you're going to lose your status as asylum seekers. Not good, not good at all.
You know what, Susan? Nick and I will have different opinions on this subject, but one thing I absolutely will stand shoulder to shoulder with her on, and anybody else that doesn't agree should listen to this, right? You said it. It is extraordinary to me that in 2022, the Home Office is not fit for purpose. It's extraordinary to me at the date and time. We've got 170,000 migrants, right, waiting for processing. How we cannot have a system, whether it's the Bibby Stockholm or Rwanda or turning the boats back or doing this or doing that. It is an absolute blight on this country. The reason we wanted to put you on this morning is, and I think the real salient point is, if Susan Phoenix, Nick, who's worked all her life, that's why it gets me, and wants to retire to Portland, Dorset, she has every right to say, I didn't expect this. Take these people in leafy Surrey or in Westminster. But no, she gets called a racist. She gets called all sorts of names because apparently that's unfair. I think it's an absolute embarrassment to this country, the migration problem. I really, really do. And I genuinely would go even further, Susan, and say, I think politicians now deal in sound bites. I don't think they even either A, know how to deal with it, or B, want to. And shame on them. And actually, for people like you, we really appreciate you being on, and keep the fight going, because you have every single right. Definitely.
Susan Phoenix, thank you so much for your time.